Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has granted us the blessing of faith in Islam and the opportunity to hear this story full of wisdom. May those who listen be blessed in their lives, protected from all calamities, and guided on the path pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us begin this touching story, which I hope will be a valuable lesson for us all. Intending to demolish a mosque, an Israeli military bulldozer exploded without any apparent reason. This occurred in a small village called Khirbat al-Jawaya, located in the West Bank, which is often targeted for destruction by Israeli military forces. In this village stood an old mosque named Al-Huda, built decades ago by the hands of Palestinians with voluntary donations. Despite its simplicity, the mosque was the center of the village's spiritual and communal life. On May 10, 2025, an ordinary morning turned into a nightmare. Israeli military forces arrived with 6 armored vehicles and 2 large bulldozers. Their goal was clear: to raze the Al-Huda mosque to the ground. They justified this by claiming the mosque lacked a construction permit from Israeli authorities. A local resident, Sheikh Ammar, who also served as the mosque's imam, stood in front of the mosque's fence holding a Quran. His face was calm, but his eyes reflected sorrow and determination. Beside him stood dozens of other residents, including children and women, praying silently, shedding tears. Some raised their hands to the sky, invoking Allah's help. The squad commander, Captain Eli Barut, issued the order in a loud voice. "Remove them! Start demolishing the building immediately." However, some soldiers appeared hesitant. They looked at the group of unarmed people who were simply praying and standing without resistance. Despite the military orders, one bulldozer, driven by an operator named Vannon, began approaching the mosque. Its massive wheels churned the earth and debris. A few stones and the mosque's fence were crushed. The first step toward destroying Allah's house had been taken. However, when the bulldozer was just a few meters from the mosque's wall, something strange happened. The bulldozer emitted a loud noise, and thick black smoke poured from its exhaust pipe. The operator tried to shut off the engine and restart it, but suddenly a loud explosion deafened everyone on the scene. The bulldozer exploded on the spot. No one had touched it. There were no mines, no gunshots, no apparent technical causes. Metal fragments scattered in all directions, but astonishingly, not a single civilian was harmed. The bulldozer operator was thrown from the machine and taken to a military hospital in critical condition. The Israeli troops immediately panicked. They retreated several meters and called in sappers, suspecting mines around the mosque. But after 2 hours of searching, the results were nil. No explosives, no electrical detonators, no traces of sabotage. No one could explain why such a heavy machine exploded suddenly, as if it had been dropped from the sky. This event quickly spread across social media. A Palestinian activist, Mariam Kadra, recorded the final seconds of the explosion from about 30 meters away. The video went viral. Within 3 hours, it was shared over 1 million times on TikTok and Instagram. In the video, the voices of residents praying together can be heard as the bulldozer approached. "Allah, protect this house from the hands of the wicked." Then the explosion occurred. Users worldwide called it a true miracle. Some compared the event to significant moments in Islamic history. Many commented, "Subhanallah, Allah truly protects his house. This mosque has celestial guardians." They wanted to demolish the mosque, but instead they received a strike from Allah. Even some liberal Jews in Jerusalem began questioning the increasingly harsh actions of the military against places of worship. A professor of religious philosophy at Tel Aviv University said in a television interview, "We must start to understand that there are things that cannot be explained by ordinary logic. If the mosque remains standing and our military equipment exploded without reason, perhaps it's time to ask who we are really fighting against." The Israeli military remained silent for 2 days. They issued no official statement, but information leaked to local media that no technical faults had been detected in the bulldozer before the explosion. Meanwhile, in the village of Khirbat al-Jawaya, residents held a prayer on the square in front of the mosque. Sheikh Ammar said to those gathered, "Today it was not us who won, but Allah." He showed that anyone who plans evil against his house will not go unpunished. We must continue to preserve our faith, not through violence, but through prayers and conviction. Since then, the Al-Huda Mosque has become even more frequented. not only by local residents, but also by international activists, journalists, and even some Jews curious to see the mosque protected by the heavens. Some came simply to sit in silence, others asked to join the prayers. This story also caused psychological trauma for several soldiers on duty that day. One of them, David Corin, a young soldier who witnessed the explosion from 5 meters away, confessed in a private interview that he began doubting his actions. I never believed in mysticism, but that day I felt an invisible force opposing the destruction. I felt I was fighting against something holy. To this day, the Al-Huda Mosque stands, and no further attempts to demolish it have been made, whether out of fear or shame, but the military has not returned to the village. The residents call this day the day Allah showed his power. Every Friday, when the azan echoes from the mosque's simple minaret, its sound resonates louder than before, not because of amplifiers, but because everyone who comes here knows this is no ordinary mosque. It is Allah's house that they tried to destroy, but which instead destroyed the enemy's weapon. Subhanallah. Since the explosion of the Israeli bulldozer in front of the Al-Huda Mosque, the small village of Khirbat al-Jawaya has completely changed. The mosque, previously known only to locals, is now in the global spotlight. Thousands of people arrive, not only from Palestine but also from abroad, including human rights advocates, journalists, and even scholars. But the most remarkable thing happened 3 weeks after the explosion. A former Israeli soldier who had previously participated in the operation to destroy the mosque secretly embraced Islam. His name is David Corin, and he is only 26 years old. Previously, he was known as a disciplined, cold, and loyal soldier to his superior's orders. However, after witnessing the bulldozer explode without cause, his thoughts gave him no peace. He confessed to waking up in the middle of the night covered in sweat, hearing voices calling him to prayer, despite living in a secular Jewish neighborhood in Beersheba, where he had never heard the azan. David decided to return to Khirbat al-Jawaya in secret, dressed in civilian clothes and posing as a tourist. He wanted to confirm that nothing had changed in the mosque, and whether there was truly something invisible causing heavy machinery to explode without reason. Upon arriving in the village, he saw residents preparing for the afternoon prayer. He observed them from afar, standing among a crowd of strangers. The sound of the azan echoed from an old loudspeaker, but strangely it was crystal clear in his ears, as if the azan was directed straight to his heart. After the azan, a small Palestinian boy sitting next to David suddenly turned and said in Hebrew, "Did you come to find an answer?" David remained silent, not responding, but the boy only smiled, stood up, and softly said, "If your heart is honest, God will show you a sign." The child ran to the mosque. David was stunned. His heart trembled without knowing why. He entered the mosque's courtyard and sat in a corner. He saw Sheikh Ammar, the elderly imam he had seen standing calmly before the bulldozer, now leading the prayer with reverence. His movements were calm, his voice soft but clear, and the atmosphere was peaceful. No coercion, no hatred, only submission. After the prayer, Sheikh Ammar approached him. He wasn't angry or suspicious. He simply smiled and extended his hand. "Are you the one who came 3 weeks ago?" he asked in soft Arabic. David nodded quietly, lowering his head. "I was there when the bulldozer exploded." Sheikh Ammar nodded calmly. "We don't seek revenge. We only pray." David looked into his eyes and said softly, "I want to know what makes you so sure that God will protect this mosque." Sheikh Ammar replied, placing his hand on David's chest. "Because we believe Allah named Dawood al-Israeli." After embracing Islam, he did not return to the army. He decided to stay in Khirbat al-Jawaya, helping residents rebuild a small school destroyed in previous attacks. He also began learning Arabic and reading the Quran. Whenever the azan sounded, he was always the first to arrive at the mosque. International media also began to take interest in this story, but due to its sensitivity, many Israeli media preferred to remain silent. They did not want the public to know that one of their soldiers had embraced the religion they had long been in conflict with. However, the story continued to spread by word of mouth from village to city, from Gaza to Jerusalem. Many soldiers who had served in the same unit as Daud began to question their beliefs. Some even started secretly refusing orders to destroy places of worship. Meanwhile, the Al-Huda Mosque is no longer just a stone building. It has become a symbol of resilience, patience, and proof that Allah's light will never be extinguished, even if the world tries to put it out. Da'a, no longer an Israeli border guard, but a protector of Palestinian children performing wudu with a sincere smile, often says in a gentle voice, "I came with a weapon, but now I've stayed to bring peace." Subhanallah. Nearly 2 months have passed since Daud al-Israeli, a former Israeli soldier, pronounced the Shahada in the square of the Al-Huda Mosque. He is now part of the large family of the Khirbat al-Jawaya community. His presence has not only brought peace, but also sparked interest from many, including his former comrades. Some Israeli soldiers who served with him in the same unit began secretly visiting the village. Some disguised themselves as technicians, journalists, or even drivers. But all came with the same question: what is really happening in this village? One of them, Lieutenant Jonathan Levi, Daud's former superior, was known as a tough, rational man who often mocked any religion. But after the bulldozer incident, he was haunted by strange feelings. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the old mosque standing firm, despite being attacked for days. Eventually, Jonathan infiltrated the village, posing as a journalist. He brought a camera and notebooks, pretending to want to document the culture of the Palestinian villagers. But everything changed when he saw Daud smiling and teaching children how to perform wudu. Their eyes met. "You should be in uniform today," Jonathan said coldly. But Daud only replied softly, "I found something more worthy of my protection." Jonathan wanted to argue, but his heart felt struck by lightning. He saw how the residents, once attacked, now welcomed Daud with embraces, not hatred. He saw Sheikh Ammar, walking with a cane but still smiling at everyone, even those he knew as enemies. That day, Jonathan decided to secretly spend the night at the mosque. He pretended to be asleep on the porch, but his eyes were open when the morning call to prayer sounded. And at that moment, an event occurred that the world's cameras did not capture. The dark sky above the mosque suddenly parted, as if a ray of light had sliced through it. All the residents around the mosque looked up. A direct beam of light descended from the sky and struck the mosque's dome, illuminating the part that had been nearly destroyed before. There was absolute silence. Only the beating of hearts could be heard. Some children wept quietly. Some adults sat speechless. Even Jonathan, who did not believe in God, stood frozen. He felt his entire body enveloped by an undeniable truth. In that silence, Sheikh Ammar's voice was heard clearly, though he spoke softly. "You see, it is not by our strength, but by Allah's mercy to a patient people." Then a voice from the crowd, soft but staggering, said, "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." Everyone wept. "I saw something last night. I can no longer deny it. All this time, I was wrong, so wrong." Jonathan sat down and wept loudly. His sobs touched the hearts of the residents, and even some soldiers in the crowd, disguised as civilians, also wept. That day, in front of the Al-Huda Mosque they had intended to destroy, an Israeli soldier pronounced the Shahada under Sheikh Ammar's guidance, and in the presence of Palestinians who held no grudge. Since then, the Al-Huda Mosque has become not just a place of worship, but a spiritual turning point for many seeking the truth. More and more soldiers heard the story of Daud and Jonathan, and more began refusing to carry out orders to attack places of worship. Even some Jewish families living near the border started secretly visiting the mosque and asking questions about Islam. The Israeli government began to panic. It tried to block the information, spreading false rumors that the mosque incident was just a myth. But it was in vain, for the truth cannot be silenced forever, especially when it has touched honest hearts. 3 months later, a letter arrived from the International Islamic Organization. The Al-Huda Mosque was officially declared a protected sacred site. No military force had the right to touch it. Anyone who tried to harm it would wound the hearts of millions of people worldwide. Now Daud and Jonathan have become mentors to new converts. They travel, sharing the true story of their lives, the story of former attackers who have become protectors. When asked what made them change, they simply reply, "We didn't see Islam with our eyes. We saw it with an open heart." Subhanallah. Such is the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. When the heart is open, the light of guidance penetrates even those who once hated. May this story strengthen our faith, remind us that nothing is impossible for Allah, and that Islam is a religion of mercy for the entire world. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. May Allah reward you abundantly, and may this story be a source of goodness in our lives. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.